Thanks to our writer Asdin, who's worked double time to get this review of Temtem out for you. We'll pop a link to his channel down in the description. Now, after a successful Kickstarter campaign and its early access on Steam, Crema, a game studio based in Madrid in Spain, alongside Humble Games, have released Temtem across multiple platforms, but now on the hybrid console. Will this Pokemon-inspired MMO be a no-go, or will it be worth playing for the season pass? Well, let's find out. In this story, the inhabitants live in harmony with Temtem, around the 6 floating islands of the airborne archipelago. The younger generations leave home in order to become a Temtem tamer. This title brings many adventures, discoveries, and even the threat of Clan Bel Soto, an evil organisation that plans to take over the islands by force. Each of the 6 floating islands has its own biome, and Temtem types living within them. The player will have to face 8 dojo leaders in order to become the ultimate trainer. Let's be honest, the narrative isn't very original, but it does create a backdrop to the flow and mechanics of the game. There are some dark and less childlike tones within it, which is a welcome twist to a genre seemingly linked to more gentle rhetoric. This is a massively multiplayer creature collection adventure, with a strong emphasis on interacting with other players that you'll see in the world. Your game begins with creating your character, followed by choosing one of 3 Temtem from Professor Konstantinos. Sound familiar? Your rival will defeat you and the professor will give you a second monster. Yep, elephant in the room. If you've played any Pokemon game in the last 25 years, then this will be easy to get into. It borrows a lot of items and mechanics, albeit with its own versions, such as Pokeballs being Tem cards in this game and so on. There are some solid side quests in the title, as well as many creatures to battle and capture. As expected, there are 12 Temtem types, which are either weaker or stronger to each other. Some are straightforward to work out, although others may need more time to get your head around. Battles occur at random when traversing through the grass and caves, and these will see the player releasing 2 monsters to engage the untamed creatures. Once its health has been reduced significantly, you can throw a Tem card in the hopes of adding them to your roster. One unique mechanic is the stamina system. Temtem can carry out one of 4 moves, each with an amount of stamina points needed to pull it off. When your stamina is depleted, your monster will need a cooldown of 1 turn. The other alternative is to use all of your stamina and any health the move overlaps. This means that the player must really pay attention to what moves to carry out and even plan ahead. Potentially carrying out a move when your Temtem's on death's door might result in it fainting from exhaustion. Knowing when to attack and recover your stamina is key. This system works well in practice thanks to all battles featuring 2 Temtem and means that one can attack as the other one catches their breath. Another great feature is that some moves, denoted by a symbol on the top left of the name, can trigger synergies if it meets the requirements written in the description. This also adds another layer of strategy, as players will be able to pair their creatures and synergize well with each other. Although venturing through the game can be punishing, there is a small chance of respite thanks to the Temtem file. This item will revive and restore your team and is a great way to aid the player and avoid too much backtracking to the healing stations. But ensuring you use it at the right time is important for your success, or an urgent return to your last recovery stop will be needed. Then there's evolution. As you'd expect, Temtems evolve after reaching specific levels depending on their species. And they can also increase level during combat, which in a pinch can often give you a brand new move to help you out. As a long-time Pokemon fan, I can tell you that they've really handled evolution well, and seeing their transformations for the first time becomes quite a memorable experience. Here's a big issue, and for me, honestly, a bit of a turn-off. Temtem is going to require you to be connected to the internet all the time. Now obviously it has MMO mechanics, but these aren't intrinsic to the core game, and it feels like an offline mode would have been a very wise choice. I did feel slightly deflated at seeing the game restart whenever the internet disconnected or when putting the Switch into sleep mode. It has a function whereby it reconnects itself so that you don't have to reload the whole game. It will return to where you left off, but you're looking at about a 30 to 60 second process. For those who don't have good internet or who only have an offline option, well, Temtem is certainly not the game for you. With that said though, it really does bring this style of game to life, seeing hundreds of other players running around with their tamed monsters behind them, and you can interact with them in a number of different ways. I wasn't able to get the chance to play with someone else in co-op, but I imagine it would be very fun indeed. As is the nature of the beast these days, there is a battle pass with seasons rotating over time, akin to those seen in Fortnite. Most of the rewards are cosmetic and require real money to purchase in-game currency. With your purchase of Temtem, you will also get Temtem Plus, that gives you access to unlimited trading, extra Temtem storage, and unrestricted access to global chat. The reason this review was resubmitted was because we thought you had to buy that separately, and it massively changed the overall experience. We were wrong, and now the review's right. There's loads in here, things like mounts, you can own a home and decorate it to your liking, as well as obviously breeding Temtems. There's a whole wealth of activities to carry out with your friends or by yourself, albeit online, and it is very addictive. And the controls do a really good job, considering functions are cleverly mapped out to bring up notifications and even the chat window. Battling can be tough but satisfying when you become the victor, and seeing your little cel-shaded creature evolve into a monstrous fight machine, it's exhilarating. But as of right now, it's a flawed gem. Most of these flaws I'll discuss in the next section, but it must be said that the game would softlock on loading battles sometimes, as well as some crashes to desktop, and even from the get-go, the simple task of creating your character became cumbersome due to a bug which means that unless you have a unique name, it will kick you back to the start of the naming process and you'll just have to keep trying it. Supposedly there is an error message, but it pops up underneath the keyboard box, so you never get to see that. Suffice to say, when I got my name right, I was into the game. Credit needs to be given for the indie team for smashing a Kickstarter goal and for creating something that Game Freak has not attempted in over 2 decades. Obviously, an MMO game requiring an internet connection is no real surprise and can't be seen as a negative, but the intermittent connection issues certainly can, which mainly affect the visuals and performance score, but they do impact the gameplay as well. Still, gameplay scores 15 out of 20, and the controls do a really good job. Controls score 18 out of 20. Let's start with the performance. Temtem has a slightly fluctuating frame rate. It's far from bad most of the time, but does need a little bit of work. What does require immediate attention though are some of the bugs and crashes that have been experienced. In what's become all too familiar, Temtem currently is a little unstable on Switch in that regard, including soft locking issues and a couple of crashes to desktop, which I can only imagine will be something most users will experience. Artistically though, it's a gorgeous game which uses a semi-cel shaded art style which suits the creature designs and everything else within the Airborne archipelago. The Temtem designs themselves are really quite imaginative, certainly more so than some of the random ice cream and trash heap Pokemons we've seen over the years. The battle animations also stand out, with the clever cues that aid the player on whether the attack will be effective or not, as well as the portraits of the monsters reflecting how they feel in the moment. Seeing the world populated by real players makes it feel more alive, even if some materialise in and out of existence. Watching others wearing different clothes and accompanied by their Temtems visually helps the player by previewing the possibilities of things to come. There's always that MMO moment where you see someone with something you want. It's usually shiny, over the top and obnoxious, but it must be acquired. The downside, as alluded to earlier, is the intermittent frame rates and the current instability. Visuals and performance score 12 out of 20, with a patch that would easily come up much higher. But do check the top comment because we'll make sure we update that when that happens, or put it in an all patched up episode. The soundtrack though has no such issues, with some great music, especially the battle themes, which boast a mixture of acoustic and orchestral tracks, and each Temtem has their own growls, with the sounds of elemental attacks crashing in the arena to elevate the heat of battle. Audio scores 18 out of 20. On the eShop, it'll cost you £39.99 or your regional equivalent, and it will take up 4.3 gigabytes of space. There is a deluxe edition that's significantly more expensive, but only mentions cosmetic items. And Temtem can also be had physically. Certainly without any issues, not only could this stand shoulder to shoulder with similar games in its genre, in many areas it would stand above them. The MMO aspects suit this style of game perfectly, but allowing you to switch to an offline state really would have been beneficial. It's a 25-year-old formula that manages to feel quite fresh. Yes, we do need a few patches. Those crashes are still unacceptable. With that said though, there is an incredible amount of content here, and the asking price is now reasonable. Value scores 15 out of 20. Respect has to go to Kremer for trying to reinvent the wheel, taking a formula that's 25 years old and also producing one of the first MMOs that's available on the Nintendo Switch, while simultaneously releasing across all platforms can't have been an enviable task. but they've pulled it off just. There's a bit of patchwork that's required, but the core game here is very fun indeed. It gets a SwitchUp score of 78%. So now you have the correct version of the review with the right information. I do still hope we get that patch quite quickly, and if we do, this game's easily moving up into the 80s. A thanks as always to Asdin for helping with this one, and for all things Switch. Oh, and thanks to our patrons, you guys are amazing. If you do buy the game, you can save 10% using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!